give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire.
The most popular heavy metal band in the world, they built their success on an uncompromising musical vision and the fierce loyalty of their fans.
We're just four lucky fans that got together and started playing. This could be you.
Their fans are so hardcore and so into them. It's like almost like a religion.
They are the Led Zeppelin of this generation.
For Metallica, hard rock meant playing hard, on stage and off.
We're living the rock and roll lifestyle to the very, very fullest.
You know, whatever the bill was, it was all worth it. It's all rock and roll. It's all being on tour.
Their drinking became the stuff of legend, and the rock press dubbed them
Alcoholica.
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 I'd be so ripped out of my head. Next time we came into town, you know, there were boyfriends and dads looking for me.
Amid the mayhem, Metallica endured its share of hardship and tragedy.
The road horrors, the deaths, the things, the breakings of arms and burnings and everything, they were just challenges for us.
They were rocked hard by a freak pyrotechnic disaster.
James Hetfield looks like that torch that they carry up the stairs to light the Olympic fire.
And they refused to surrender when a bus crash claimed the life of bassist Cliff Burton.
And I turned around and I saw Cliff's legs sticking out from underneath the bus.
Through it all, they set the standard for no compromise, straightforward heavy metal mastery.
We're selfish and honest about it. That's the two things that I think keep Metallica going, honesty and selfishness. We're doing this for ourselves. Tonight,
The underground sensation who became one of the most influential forces in hard rock history, Metallica, behind the music. Metallica rose from garage band to global stadium phenomenon on their own terms. By the time they began making radio singles and music videos, they had already carved out a powerful place in heavy metal history.
They were playing arenas before MTV even heard of them.
Radio was nowhere, MTV, definitely, big no-no. No one would help us, so we played live. We played till we dropped.
Metallica's music is laden with hard-hitting images of adolescent rage, suicide, drug addiction, mental illness, and political violence. Their lyrics take on taboos, set to the spirit of pure rock and roll rebellion.
A battery works off positive and negative, So we were very good at the negative stuff.
And at the heart of Metallica's success lies the unity and collective strength of its four singular personalities.
We grew up together, and it was like family, and you're fighting brothers, you're, loving brothers.
I've been together with James Hetfield for half my life. There's a tremendous amount of respect for each other, even though none of us would ever comp to it.
They still are very close and still very compatible, and it is their baby.
James is like, I would say, the creative driving force.
Anything that Metallica's going to stamp their name on has to be up to his standard before it'll happen.
The four of us bring something different to the table. And when it comes down to reading a contract or, sorting out some business thing, we all look at Lars.
And he does a large part of the arranging also, of the music.
Jason really developed into the live guy. He is the never-ending connection with the fans. He'll stop the fan and go looking for people to sign autographs,
He's the first guy that comes to me and tells me if I'm losing it.
And Kirk, the slightly insane free spirit.
Eccentric, Quirk Hammett. He's the spiritual, that kind of vibe.
And the only way to maintain a band that have four characters that are so different from each other is to allow each other the space to exist and do what they want.
And we knew from day one that this was going to be our lives. And we were going to make this thing work, no matter what.
James Hetfield was born in Downey, California in 1963, and raised in a strict Christian Science family, broken by divorce. When James was a teenager, cancer claimed his mother's life.
Doctors and hospitals are kind of like taboo, and with the help of God, you will get better. you know, you're kind of going with it, but you feel it's not quite right, and you're at school, and okay, now it's time for health class, and I have to get up and leave. You know, learning about the body wasn't necessary. This is a shell, and what's true is your soul and all this. So actually leaving class and then getting, you know, all the little kids. So that was the beginning of alienation, I believe, as a child.
Back then, James was like the most introverted person you've ever seen. He didn't really talk. Anytime you'd see him, he'd just, hey, how's it going? Pick up his guitar and just start jamming away, you know.
In 1963, on the other side of the globe, Lars Ulrich was born to a prominent Danish tennis pro. For a time, he was groomed to follow in his father's footsteps.
The thing was that in Denmark, I was somebody, you know, ranked sort of somewhere in the top 10s in my junior years and so on. When I came to the States in like 1980, I was basically like, I mean, I wasn't even ranked in the top 10 on the block I lived on.
In the beginning, he was sort of kind of an air guitar guy, you know, and going completely, you know, crazy with his broomstick or whatever, or a kind of a racket, you know. Of course, a tennis racket can also be sort of an air guitar, right?
Drums had been the kind of hobby away from tennis, and at the tail end of 1979, there was what was called the new wave of British heavy metal. Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, Motorhead, Saxon, Tigers of Pantang, Diamond Head, Angel Witch, you know, the list goes on. It was the attitude. The attitude came from Motorhead.
Rock and roll is supposed to bring you crazed joy and rebellion for no apparent reason, for its own sake, right? That's what it started out as, music to piss your parents off with.
James and Lars met in Los Angeles in 1981, drawn together by fate, and the musicians wanted ads in a local paper.
You know, under heavy metal, there were two guys, and it was me and him. Lars had this drum kit. It was 10 different colors, one cymbal. He hit it, it kept falling over.
Finally, he sits down, and he's just like, I'm going, you sure this guy played drums before?
What Lars may have lacked musically, he more than made up for with his personal connections in the heavy metal scene. Lars had a friend who was producing a compilation album featuring local metal bands.
Lars called me up and said, hey, if I put together a band, can I be on your compilation album? I said, yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Lars had really had a spot on the record, but no band. So, in my kind of will and maybe greediness to get going in this thing, said, okay, we'll hook up.
The band had a spot reserved on an upcoming album. Soon they had a second guitarist, Dave Mustaine.
I went in there and I set up my gear. I started warming up, and these guys were all in the other room. And I walked in there and I said, come on, let's go. And they said, you got the job. And I went, that was easy.
In 1981, Metallica's frenetic two-guitar sound was a direct assault on LA's softcore glam rock scene.
We weren't doing what they were doing. They were playing pretty much cheeky music because they wanted the girls, and all we wanted to do was rule the world.
If you came here to see spandex and big hair, this ain't your band, and that was kind of became our war cry, you know.
Metallica met with an apathetic response in the LA clubs, which only served to fuel their aggressive play.
That developed our style. We were up on stage, we wanted attention. We're going to play louder, we're going to play faster.
Our whole existence pretty much was for guitar dominating the world and getting liquored up.
In the winter of 1981, a benefit for Metal Mania magazine brought the band to San Francisco. The city was a hotbed for the new heavy metal movement.
Everybody just wanted to make the most obnoxious, loudest, scare your parents, annoy people, fastest music you could.
That heavy crunch stuff was way new, and everybody loved it, you know. It tickles your same kind of funny bone that makes you break windows when you're a kid.
One of those Bay Area fans was Exodus guitarist Kirk Hammett.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was the most original, heaviest, fastest thing I had ever seen in my life.
By the time Metallica returned to Los Angeles, tensions within the band were building. Dave Mustaine's drinking was getting out of hand.
There was always some clashing between Ron and Dave. Ron couldn't hang. He didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
Ron was soon out, and Metallica was in the market for a new bassist.
Lars had asked me, they were kind of looking around for another bass player, and he asked me if I knew anybody. I said, well, why don't you guys come down and see this band Trom at the Troubadour? They're pretty cool. I think you might like the bass player.
When I first saw Cliff Burton, I'd never seen anybody quite like him on stage.
And his head banging on stage, I mean, nobody banged like him. It was insane. I remember the first time I saw them play with him, I was like, oh my God, look at that guy.
The next day after a performance, he'd
get up and, oh, God, my neck, I can't understand. Cliff, what do you mean? Your neck, you're bouncing your head up and down all night long, and you wonder why your neck hurts. So, but anyway, he kind of smiled.
You know, after 6 months of courting him, it just came to the point where he would join the band on that one condition, which was if we wanted him in the band, Metallica goes to Northern California.
LA sucks!
We really had no problem with that. LA wasn't treating us very well at all.
Metallica moved to San Francisco in the spring of 1983 and rented a small house in El Cerrito. These were lean times for the band, but they had found a home for their unique brand of metal.
We just moved all the furniture out of the house and invite 50 headbanging friends over, put Venom on the stereo, and just thrash the place, you know?
By the time you walk in the club, we just be like, metal rules! That guy's got a blonde stripe in his hair. Kill him. Kiss that Motley Crue creep. You know, it's like, man, at one point we were tearing people's shirts off that said bands we didn't like.
There was kids with denim jackets on that had Metallica patches on the back, and the support band was playing, and they turned around, they turned their backs on them, and we're standing there doing this, you know? And it's like, wow, they're loyal to us. They're our people, you know?
Coming up, hard rock hits hard times in New York City.
We didn't have a lot of money. Just a piece of bologna on your hand and just eat it.
Loser's lunch, we called it. It was bologna on hand because they didn't even have white bread.
And a tragic crash threatens to derail the band's success.
And I heard everyone screaming except for Cliff.
And later, Metallica's future almost goes up in flames.
A big colored flame goes right up under me.
And his skin is bubbling like on the Toxic Avenger.
When Behind the Music continues. In 1983, Metallica had moved to San Francisco to join forces with eccentric bass genius Cliff Burton. At that time, a brisk underground trade in tape cassettes kept metal fans up on the latest hot bands.
A band that would never play once would get famous around the world within a few months just from the copies of their demo getting around all around the world.
When Lars circulated Metallica's 7-song demo, No Life Till Leather, the band became an underground sensation.
That they had this huge, giant following before they even really had a record out.
Metallica's demo wound up in the hands of Johnny and Marcia Zazula, who ran a music flea market in New Jersey called Rock and Roll Heaven. It was the East Coast capital of the growing metal movement.
Metallica was the answer to America's prayers. They were the first band we heard that really made America look
they gave
good.
the American headbanger something to hang a hat on.
Johnny Z offered to manage Metallica and to secure them a recording deal.
So we come out to New York and we meet this guy who was giving us, $75 to drive across the country. It's like, hi, we're Metallica. Hi, I'm Johnny Z. Well, John, come here. Well, you see the guy with the Dave Mustaine? We're actually going to get rid of him next week. Whoa.
That trip was very detrimental to my leaving the band. When we would get drunk, they would get silly and I would get really violent. And violent people and silly people don't mix when they're inebriated.
They came to the East Coast, hungry with a goal and a mission. We were ready to guide their career. We had shows for them, but we were not people of means. And they wanted to rehearse, and they wanted to play. But we said, what are we going to do? So Anthrax had a little rehearsal place in Queens.
We set him up with a room at this place, the Music Building in Jamaica, Queens, which was basically what would be now considered like a crack house.
We had the added luxury of also living there because we couldn't afford to live anywhere else.
We had a toaster oven and an igloo cooler that we lived out of, all four of us in this place.
On a good day, we would sneak down to a local McDonald's. On a bad day,
it was loser's lunch, we called it. It was bologna on hand because they didn't even have white bread. I mean, nothing.
We were sleeping on U-Haul blankets. That was us. And we all got up early one morning and walked into the other room where Dave was sleeping and...
Shake, shake, shake. Dave wakes up and rolls over and... what's going on, guys?
I look up and I see the four of them. They said, you're out of the band. And I said, what, no warning? No second chance?
The famous line, Dave, you're out of the band. When's my plane leave?
You're spending the next 4 days on a Greyhound bus that leaves in 45 minutes to pack your together and let's go to the bus station before you even know what hit you. And that was that.
No sooner had Dave Mustaine boarded a bus than Kirk Hammett arrived in New York to audition for the band.
I walked in, and those guys were sleeping. And I looked at my watch, and it was like 6 o'clock at night, and they were just getting up. And I was thinking, how rock and roll.
The first song we played was Seek and Destroy. And Kirk pulled off this solo. It was like, things are going to be all right, man.
And we went to the studio and recorded Kill 'Em All. From then on, I thought, well, I guess I'm in the band.
We parlayed everything we had to make this Kill 'Em All record. We thought this was an amazing record. It was a classic.
We have a debut album out on Megapush Records. It's called Kill 'Em All. We're glad to kill all you tonight. Who wants this?
The international metal underground was primed for Metallica's first album, Kill 'Em All, and sales soared to over 300,000. The band toured Europe and America for most of 1983, supporting the album and widening their audience.
They lived it, they breathed it, they slept it, metal. And the kids did the same exact thing.
We were very proud that we were 4 regular guys in street clothes getting up there and jamming.
You know, why should we change? We're on stage. You know, we're not trying to be something big and fancy, you know. It's just us doing what we do. Let's keep it that way.
Coming up, a deadly crash shakes the band to its core.
The sound of screeching brakes and being flipped around like a piece of clothes in a dryer.
Then, an explosion nearly blows away Metallica's future.
I'm going, oh my God, it's over. Oh my God, our band is done.
And later, the mayhem in Montreal.
People just storming into the grandstands and destroying everything.
Turning over cop cars, burning everything in sight.
When Behind the Music continues. In 1984, the new American metal scene had found a champion in Metallica. When the band's second album, Ride the Lightning, was picked up by Elektra Records, it quickly went gold.
Because of the buzz that they'd created live, it just worked out perfectly for Elektra. So it was one of those things that felt like a no-brainer. Just we put out the record, and because of word of mouth, kids just started buying it.
On the road, Metallica's unabashed love of alcohol became the stuff of legend. So much so, the press took to calling them
Alcoholica.
Alcoholica.
Alcoholica justified, absolutely.
It basically grew out of our love for vodka.
They were never a drug band. They were never, you know, like the American bands all want to get high. They like to drink.
We had discovered this lovely after-dinner drink called Jägermeister. There was a certain opiate in it that got you extremely violent.
Dude, had people like literally walking into walls, taking their clothes off. I mean, this stuff was lethal.
Standing up on the bar, taking a piss, whatever, you know, getting your nuts out at a restaurant.
This is sort of like a East Bay attitude, you know, crush, kill, destroy, smash.
You know, whatever the bill was, it was all worth it. It's all rock and roll. It's all being on tour.
Their rough and tumble touring life did nothing to slow Metallica down, and in the spring of 1986, the band released its third album, Master of Puppets. It sold 1 million copies without the benefit of a radio single or music video. Metallica toured for 6 months with Ozzy Osbourne. It would be their last as a supporting act.
They really give me a run for my money every night. The crowd were going nuts for them, you know, stealing the show most of the night. They were really hard to follow.
On tour, Metallica indulged in classic rock and roll excess.
And when you're 22 years old and all you want to do is get laid and get drunk and live all those excesses that you hear about or read about, and all of a sudden they're right in front of you.
We'd come right off stage into the showers, and there'd be, you know, a whole locker room shower filled with women. I mean, how great is that?
That happened. Plenty. Tub tarts, shower. 8 women washing you down at once, you know? Not a bad feeling.
You have a real sense of invulnerability when you're on tour because you're with this group of people, you know, a group of guys, and you really become, seriously, you feel like Superman. You're on this bus, nothing can touch you.
But Metallica's wild ride would soon come crashing to a halt. On September 27, 1986, the band was traveling by bus on the road between Stockholm and Copenhagen.
On that European tour, you know, we had a really bad bus.
These particular buses weren't purpose-built that we have now,
They have normal windows like a passenger coach, and the bunks are just bolted in. Then they put cardboard over the windows.
Earlier that night, a friendly dispute between Kirk and Cliff over sleeping arrangements concluded with a draw of cards.
The first card that Cliff picked was the ace of spades, and he looked at me and said, "I want your bunk." And I said, "Fine, you take my bunk, I'll sleep up front. That's probably better anyway, you know." Later on that night, at about 5 or 6 in the morning, I heard a skidding, I heard a vibration, and then this motion. I thought we were going off a cliff.
He overcorrected to get back onto the road, and as he did, the back end came around this way, and it started chomp, chomp, chomp.
It's the sound of screeching brakes and being flipped around like a piece of clothes in a dryer.
Scott woke up, like hot coffee getting poured all over me, you know, from the coffee machine, and, you know, the bus was on its side.
What happened? Is the bus gonna blow up?
Well, I jumped out of the bus, took off, did the 100-yard dash in about 7 seconds flat.
And we're standing out there in our underwear and, you know, 10 below.
And I heard everyone screaming except for Cliff. And I thought, oh my God, something's wrong.
Seeing the bus driver just, you know, freaking frantic.
And I turned around and I saw Cliff's legs sticking out from underneath the bus.
I went to, you know, pull him out, wake him up or whatever. It's like, you know, he's not moving.
And the driver walked over and started pulling on the blanket that was underneath the bus next to Cliff. And I said, "What are you doing?"
I grabbed him and said, "Don't you take that away from him."
Against all odds, the band hoped that somehow, some way, Cliff could be saved.
A crane turned up, a big crane with a jib and all that, and they hooked up a chain round the bus, and they picked the bus up.
There's still people trapped under the bus, but everyone else was okay.
I don't know if Cliff was dead at this point or not, because the bus actually slipped back after they picked it up. They lifted it to pull him out, and it slipped back and landed again on the floor.
After that, you know, I was in such shock that everything else for the next 3 or 4 hours, I can't even remember.
Kirk and James yelling at the driver.
"What did you do? What did you do?"
What happened? You know, what's going on? You know, is this guy drunk or la la la? Oh, we hit some black ice. And I recall in my underwear, you know, and socks, walking for miles, looking for this black ice, walking back on. Where's this black ice? I don't see any black ice. And I wanted to kill this guy. I was gonna end him there.
Early Saturday morning, September 27th, 1986, on the road near Ljungby, Sweden, Cliff Burton died. He was 24 years old.
He just got thrown out the window and boom, the bus landed on him, and basically, by all accounts, I mean, he never woke up.
You know, to this day, I just think, you know, it could have been me, it couldn't have been me, but it's never left me to this day.
You always feel protected on tour. Nothing bad can happen like this. It's not allowed. You know what I mean? This is rock and roll, man. Nobody dies. But they do, and it had happened, and it was hard to grasp that.
Drinkers we were. We went back to the hotel and just drank, you know.
I remember at 4 o'clock in the morning, I could hear James down on the street, drunk, screaming, Cliff, where are you?" And when I heard that, I just broke into tears, you know.
Within hours, news of Cliff's death reached Metallica's fans in America. One such fan was Flotsam and Jetsam bassist Jason Newsted.
I remember tears hitting the newspaper. Killed in Sweden, Metallica bassist Cliff Burton, 24 years old or whatever, and I'm just lost it.
Lars, James, and Kirk returned to San Francisco to attend the funeral of their friend and bandmate.
Lars took over from then on, and, you know, in all fairness to Lars, without Lars Ulrich, that band wouldn't be where they are today.
With the added pressure of a Japanese tour scheduled to begin within a month, the band auditioned 40 prospective bassists in San Francisco.
I can remember those auditions just being really, really bad because we were drinking throughout the whole thing. We were still grieving, obviously.
We tried out quite a few people. Les Claypool from Primus was actually one of them.
Lars was all, "You're not used to playing this kind of music, are you?" And I was like, "No, hey, you know, you guys want to jam on some Isley Brothers tunes, you know?" And nobody laughed at my joke.
He was too good. He was like, "Okay, you got your own thing," you know.
They never called me, and I wept like a little girl.
Well, a guy would come in, that just didn't look right or whatever. Plug the bass in for 20 seconds. Next. I mean, it was cold. And I'm just going whole. I was shaking in my boots.
Jason, we thought, was the man.
Kind of the punter vibe, but he had the energy that we were looking for. We sat down and we decided he's going to be the guy, so we took him to this place, Tommy's Joint in San Francisco, where we kind of like to hang, and took him out to grub, and Lars and I went in the bathroom to piss together. It's like, let's go tell him now, okay.
Lars comes out, do you want a job? And I go, nah, I guess. And he goes, okay, you're going to be bass roadie. And I'm like, you know, like, he goes, no, you got it, man, you're in. You want to play with us? And I'm like, Jason's jumping off the table and doing backflips and all this stuff. It's like, okay, all right, man, you know. But soon after that was the hazing.
We gave him a pretty tough time because we didn't want him to think that he just like waltzed into a perfect situation, you know.
And then when a period of calm hits, that's when the reality starts setting in. And then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. And then the emotions start coming out.
You know, I hate to say this, but Jason became the scapegoat for you know, the tragic loss that we had just experienced with Cliff.
With the specter of Cliff Burton's death hanging over the band, they embarked for Japan in the fall of 1986. But for Metallica and their new bass player, the transition was a hard one.
We were all trying to see his boiling point, you know, or how much he can take, you know.
We told everyone he was gay. We'd go out to a hotel bar and like buy drinks for everyone and charge it to Jason's room.
And then we went to sushi that night. Jace, that green stuff, it's mint sauce. Put some of that, you'll love it. Wasabi.
But he kept walking into every single landmine and every single trap we set for him. And that just made it more and more fun.
Part of loving him means that he has to accept us for who we are, which is not easy.
I mean, everyone thinks, wow, this guy's landed the greatest gig, etc. On the one hand, yes, but on the other hand, think of all the baggage that he's got to plow through, plus he's got those three.
Still mourning the loss of Cliff Burton, Metallica found an outlet for their anger and rage in the recording studio. Their album, And Justice for All, was a progressive, frenzied, and violent album that pronounced the death of the American dream and found immediate favor with heavy metal fans.
With Metallica, people truly feel a part of something. They feel a part of a unit. They feel a part of an army. They really are into participating with everybody else in making this big noise back to us. Sometimes so intense that it's louder than the PA system.
They'll leave a venue like at 4 o'clock in the morning and there's kids still waiting out there. It doesn't make a difference how tired they are. They'll talk to every single one, sign every single piece of paper. They're incredibly gracious and generous, and their fans know it and appreciate it.
We're just 4 lucky fans that got together and started playing. This could be you.
In October of 1990, Metallica entered the studio to record their 5th album with producer Bob Rock.
So I saw them live, and I was very surprised to see how powerful they were.
He came to us and said, look, you haven't captured what you're capable of on a record yet.
So I just wanted them to sound better. And basically, by sounding better, hopefully the audience would get bigger and more people could get into Metallica.
Say your prayers, little one, don't forget my son, to include everyone.
The recording process took over 10 months and cost over $1 million. The grueling sessions were plagued by creative differences and personal conflicts.
Throughout the whole recording, we were so anal about everything, so protected about everything, so guarded about everything, that it created a lot of tension.
We forgot why we were there, to create and play music.
By the time the album was finished, 3 out of 4 of us were divorced.
But by surviving the creative turmoil, Metallica emerged a stronger, better band. In August of 1991, they released their self-titled 5th album. The controversial cover reinforced the no rules but Metallica rules ethic. Black sleeve, black logo, no explanations.
We've got a bone to pick with these two. You know, it's called Black Album. It's called Black Album. Now, where did the idea come from to do an all-black album, Metallica representatives?
The Black Album entered Billboard at #1 and went double platinum in less than 2 weeks. It went on to sell 18 million copies worldwide and helped draw a mainstream audience to uncompromising heavy metal.
When you have a record that won't go away, it gives you the opportunity to keep touring on it.
Basically turned into a challenge for us, another challenge. Hell, Metallica, we'll tour 2 years. Screw it. We got the endurance.
Metallica toured relentlessly for the next 2.5 years, playing more than 300 dates worldwide.
Obviously, they're known for touring and touring and touring and touring, but in this kind of music, they proved to be the ultimate road dogs.
Since day one, that's how we got our fan base. We got to love playing live, and touring was our thing.
The band stopped in Moscow to perform for a crowd of over 500,000 Russian rock and roll fans.
Russian boys running up, hugging you, going, "We love Metallica," you know. We've been waiting our whole lives, and the energy that we got from them was just so amazing.
But in the turbulent wake of perestroika, the enthusiasm of the crowd clashed with the Russian military authorities. Violence erupted.
It's all military, beating kids down, just whacking them. They don't understand what a release is at a show. They don't know what's going on here.
During the show, the band was unaware of the mayhem. When the music stopped, Metallica was shocked to learn about the brutality that raged while they played.
I believe there was like 200 rapes, 11 deaths, people just beaten to a pulp.
In the spring of 1992, a summer tour was planned featuring Metallica with Guns N' Roses.
We wanted to get the two biggest bands together on one bill and do a stadium tour across America.
I'd always had an infatuation with Guns N' Roses. Always had an infatuation with bands that are unpredictable and dangerous.
We learned a lot that summer. We learned what not to do as a rock band.
The tour was plagued with cancellations and last-minute changes due to the recurring throat problems of Guns N' Roses singer Axl Rose. Then on August 8, 1992, the two bands were performing at Montreal's Olympic Stadium when a double dose of disaster struck.
During Fade to Black, I'm up there playing the part, and these colored flames are going off. I'm a little confused on where I should be. I walk forward, I walk back.
We have these flashes of magnesium that burns at 1,200 degrees, 1,800 degrees, who knows, but hot enough to melt metal.
The pyro guy doesn't see me that I've walked back out there. A big colored flame goes right up under me, and instantly I, squint and turn.
James Hetfield looks like that torch that they carry up the stairs to light the Olympic fire.
So I'm burnt, all my arm, my hand completely down to the bone, side of my face, hair gone, part of my back.
I said, "You all right, man?" He looked at me and he was shaking, and he brought up his hand, and I could literally see the skin rising off his hand and blister.
We see some guy come up and dump him with water and then cover him.
Well, that felt great for a second. Then I looked down and watched the skin just rising and things going wrong.
Total confusion, and adding to the mix, 50,000 people.
This is in Montreal, French speaking everywhere. We're trying to explain what's going on. Can we get to a hospital, please? A hospital, yes.
And his skin is bubbling like on the Toxic Avenger.
They're calling, for an ambulance. And, the security guys are kind of walking around, and the one guy bumps into my hand, I remember. And I just lost it. I screamed. I punched him right in the nuts.
I'm going, oh, my God, it's over. Oh, my God, our band is done.
Lars took the stage to calm the disturbed and agitated crowd.
There was an incident with the pyrotechnics. Unfortunately, James is on his way to the hospital right now, and we're very sorry, but we can't continue the concert for you guys tonight.
This is pain I've never felt in my whole life. And it won't go away. I'm freaking at this point, Anxiety, we got to get moving.
We got him into ER. The doctors and nurses there were great. They cut off his rings, his fingers were swelling. It was not a pretty sight. It was with the pain he was still going through and the unknown future that this was pointing the way to. One of his first thoughts was getting a replacement guitar guy to make sure the tour didn't have to stop.
James had sustained second and third degree burns to his left hand and both arms. He had stepped into a 12-foot-high, 3,200-degree tower of flame and survived. His future with the band was uncertain at best. Meanwhile, back at Olympic Stadium, a tense crowd waited for Guns N' Roses to perform.
Guns N' Roses could have come out and saved the day by going out and playing a 3-hour blistering set.
That didn't happen. He took his whole band off stage, and that's when all hell broke loose.
Coming up, frustration leads to destruction in Montreal.
People just storming into the grandstands and destroying everything.
Fighting the police, burning everything in sight.
And later, Metallica trims its image, but not its edge.
Metallica is all about music, not the length of our hair.
When Behind the Music continues.
But we promise you one thing from Metallica, and you know that we always good by our words. We will come back and finish our concert and play again for you as soon as we can within the next couple of months. Thank you, Montreal. We're sorry, okay?
On August 8, 1992, James Hetfield sustained severe burns after stepping into a tower of flame at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. Hours later, concert headliner Guns N' Roses took the stage with singer Axl Rose.
He could have been the hero of the day, you know. We continue the show, and, you know, the band plays on, and we're here to bring music, and he throws this fit.
Axl's monitor system wasn't to his liking. Then Storm 2 of the evening kind of happened.
He'd said something into the mic and just threw it down and walked off stage. Axl didn't want to be outdone. And that's when all hell broke loose.
So the kids start freaking. Turn over cop cars, fighting the police, burning everything in sight.
People just storming into the grandstands and destroying everything. Some cars were on fire, there were people hurt, and we couldn't leave.
I go and light myself on fire, and he upstages me.
And so we went into the dressing room, you know, and they're acting like nothing happened.
Axl's down there with the cigarette holder in one hand and the champagne glass in the other. So my voice is giving me trouble. Your voice is giving me trouble. You shouldn't probably be drinking or smoking.
And it reminded me of what it must have looked like when Rome burned and Nero played a fiddle.
We can relate to Axl and his attitude, you know. So we learned quite a bit on what not to do.
Isn't it funny how history has almost erased Guns N' Roses? One of the great frontmen in the past 20 years disappeared, yet Metallica continues to play anywhere in the world in front of any mass of people, comes out with a new record which will always go platinum. They are the Led Zeppelin of this generation.
Released from the hospital the day after the Montreal riot, Hetfield began a painful ritual of 90-minute therapy sessions. Weeks would pass before he could make a fist, let alone play guitar.
This is not going to bring us down, you know. This is going to take a lot more than that to stop Metallica. We got a friend out to fill in. It's like, you know, I could still sing.
At the time, it was like he wasn't sure that he was going to ever play again.
So John Marshall has been our savior quite a few times. So it pays, you know, if you're a roadie, learn the band's songs. You could end up on stage with them.
Very, very, very motivated to heal himself as quickly as possible. And James is the kind of guy who doesn't like letting people down.
We've asked a lot from James Hetfield as a band, as people, and he's delivered every time.
It was always, I'm going to play. This is my life, and I don't care what happens. I'm going to continue.
After 2.5 years of non-stop touring, in the summer of 1994, Metallica agreed to take a long overdue open-ended break. Kirk studied film and Asian arts at San Francisco State. Lars pursued scuba diving and immersed himself in the art scene. Jason created new music projects, and James pursued his own hobbies.
Safer hobbies like hunting, and now I got a motorcycle, hot rods, and, you know, wakeboarding, snowboarding. Plenty of outdoor danger. I love it. Live for it.
When they reunited a year later in late 1995, they were stronger than before. In the studio, there was a sense of revitalization and a new spirit of collaboration.
There was a total sense of respect and a total sense of being at ease with what the other person was bringing into it.
Let's lay back a little bit. Let's let Jason and Kirk play what they feel. You know, instead of we're standing over behind them, you know, tapping them on the shoulder. That note, no. I didn't write that note for you. It got really It was stiff, man.
It's all down to him if we're going to know.
Lyrics are the bottleneck of the whole album.
Coming up, Metallica returns to the road.
We've got such a carte blanche at this point. We can play kind of whatever, wherever we want. This freedom is just awesome.
And a new, improved Metallica is accused of selling out.
Yes, we sell out. Every seat in the house, every time we play, anywhere we play.
When Behind the Music continues. In June of 1996, Metallica released their first studio album in 5 years, Load. Although it entered Billboard at #1, the band's 6th album met with an unexpected backlash.
I can understand, like, this kid has the photo from 1991 from the Black Album. That's my Metallica. The next photo he sees is 5 years later, and it's on this other record that has semen on the cover. And these guys on the back in Cuban pimp suits with martinis and cigars and no hair. Who is that? It says Metallica on there, but I don't recognize these people.
We were doing the Unplugged in New York. They all showed up, all 4 of the guys. They're all sitting in a row, and they all had these new short haircuts and stuff. It was pretty funny. So Mike wrote some stuff on his bass about friends not letting friends get friends' haircuts because they were all GQ looking and cleaned up and stuff.
Metallica is all about music, not the length of our hair.
We've heard the word sell out, you know, from way back.
Nowadays, I welcome it. Come with me with what you got.
Yes, we sell out. Every seat in the house, every time we play, anywhere we play.
Today, after nearly 2 decades together, Metallica shows no signs of slowing down. With the release of their 7th album, Reload, in 1998, the band was back doing what they love most, performing live in concert.
The upside is playing with 3 of the greatest musicians I've ever played with in my life, and going out on stage and watching the look on the fans' faces when we play their favorite songs, and just to feed off that energy that comes off the crowd, you know. That's a really amazing thing.
And that's why they keep coming back every time, because we have delivered every time, live. That is our forte, and it will hopefully continue to be for quite some time.
And I think that the biggest accomplishment that we can do is to make that last another 10 or 20 years, and finding a way to stick around and challenging ourselves and challenging our audience. And that, I think, will be the ultimate Metallica accomplishment.
We can play kind of whatever, wherever we want. This freedom is just awesome. There's no stop sign in front of us yet, man. We're gonna roll on, and because, you know, like I said, this is family, and we don't know anything else, man. That's it.